like probably everybody watching this video, my relationship to games has changed a lot over the years with the internet and the presence of websites that talk about games, as well as channels that talk about games like mine, and of course a zillion other ones, almost creates a relationship to me with certain games before I even get the game. My gaming choices are well defined in some way. You know, I try to do research, and in some cases, I have all sorts of feelings about a game before I ever get it. And Mistfall falls into that category because, well, we're looking here at Heart of the Mists, but I was originally interested in the first in this series, Mistfall, and I was interested in it for all the reasons I'm interested in this expansion to it, a standalone expansion, and for all the reasons I'm going to be presenting it on the channel. It is a co-op game that is a fantasy adventure, card-based, heavy card management, card combination type of game. Really my sort of thing all around. But my interest in Mistfall sort of quickly diminished as I saw some of the reviews, both written and audio and video, coming in about the rule book and the complicated presentation of the material, and I just sort of I put it aside as just one of those things I wasn't going to deal with. I don't do Kickstarters and in any way, so it was just not something I was going to deal with. Then Heart of the Mists came out, and some of the problems that had been identified pretty consistently across the board with Mistfall, it was said, were corrected here with Heart of the Mists. And I came back on my radar, and I thought, all right, I'm interested in this game. And it would be appropriate for my channel. It seems like something I would personally like to play as well, and I'm going to pursue getting it. I did receive this copy of the game from the publisher, and I started to dig into it when it arrived. And I'll just show you as we're talking a little bit. I started to piece through all the cards and open up the cards and see the card text. Again, nothing surprising to me because I had watched videos about other cards, so I knew, for example, that I was going to be seeing the same art on many of the cards in a stack, and I was going to be seeing lots of keywords. Well, actually, that one's not so much, but I was going to be seeing things like this with many different icons that may not have been clearly explained, and that as I looked through them, it was going to be a bit of confusion. Here's some different card art with this reward gear. In any case, I felt prepared, and I started to go through, unpack the cards, which were not all in Saran together with the cards that they belonged with, so it took a while to sort through them. Opened up the rule book, again, tried to be prepared for it, and I just felt, unfortunately, really put off. I don't, when I do a video, and this page in particular really got to me for some reason, I don't, when I do a video, tend to watch a ton of other videos, if there are any, before I do mine. Because, well, first of all, I do a lot of videos where there aren't any already, but in this case, obviously, there are existing videos. I try not to watch them because I don't really want to be influenced by them, and I want to make sure that I can learn and understand a game on my own. And I will freely say, with this one, I did need to watch some excellent videos that are out there on how to play it. But to get back to the relationship I had to this game, as I was unpacking it and going through the cards and just feeling kind of overwhelmed and frustrated again, I opened up the quest book, which I will show you later in the video, that details the various quests that you can encounter. And following the setup instructions, it tells you, among other things, to pull out a location card. And this location card is the Hammerhead Inn. It's a haven. It's where you begin. It's a safe haven, and it starts the game. And I will tell you that once I did that, there was like almost a physical sense of relief I had. I had all the cards laid out, and underneath this box here, you can sort of see that I'm in the middle of a turn or something. Well, can't really clearly see it here, but I'm in the middle of a turn here, and it's probably not a turn from a demonstration game that I'm going to show you. But once I put that location down, once it sort of physically was on my table, I felt, as I said, just a sense of relief, a sense of grounding. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous in a way, and I'm really not the kind of person that usually uses the word grounded, but literally and figuratively, I felt grounded. It felt like all the various components were coming together to show me why this game is actually worth pursuing, why it is worth putting effort in. You're going to have to put a significant amount of effort in to learn the game. I think it's fully worth it, and in the time that I've been playing it, having done that, it has become really one of my most, I guess respected is the word, enjoyable, and just respect for the design of the game that I have in my collection. And I'm going to try to point out 5 reasons why this is the case, and maybe you will decide based on that that it either is or is not worth the effort to get there, because there's no way around saying it is an effort. It's an effort to go through the rule book. Even with the excellent videos out there, it's an effort to understand what's going on, and the complexity of the game design is manifest in the complexity of the rule set. And while it's easy to say the rules are poorly done, you know, on some level, it's hard to know what could have been better. I mean, one thing that could have been better is one page showing you every key symbol and what it means, period. I mean, it's absolutely, it boggles my mind that that does not exist. It's kind of sort of here in a glossary, but then there are some ones that aren't here, like the poison, for example. So one page showing that really would have gone a long way to making that more comprehensive, or comprehensible. I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about it. If you're interested in all the reasons why the rulebook is bad, there are many other videos that will show you. But here, what I'm going to try to do, as said, is just give a game overview and then get to 5 reasons why I think this game is worth pursuing anyway. It's pretty difficult to get everything in one screenshot. Well, it's impossible, actually, that's going on when you lay out the game. And I'll say also, I am not laying out the game as they suggest it, because my 2 characters here are one on top of each other, and their suggested layout, I think, would be next to each other. But this is how it makes sense to me conceptually to play it, and also in terms of the space that I have available. In the game, you are fulfilling a quest, and the quest cards are, the quest card here is up here, and each quest is comprised of certain different encounters, and you can't really see it, but the encounter card is there, and that one is inactive at the moment because it had been completed. What you are doing also is moving through locations, and these are represented by the location tiles. There's a semi-random setup. You're instructed as to how many to draw, and I should say here that these are actually location tiles. You know, these actually fell over here. You're moving through locations to complete objectives. During the course of that, you are encountering various enemies, and these are the enemies that are lined up here, and you are told when you would be pulling in these enemies and from which stack you are to draw from. And as your character, your life, your abilities, your weapons, your skills are all card-based, and you have a track here to indicate where the cards go and various things about you that give you special skills or whatever, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. What's below you is, in essence, what you have active and available playing from your hero area. It is your gear and feats that are there. You are encountering, if and when you do, certain enemies that are placed up here. You have allies that can aid you and come with you, and they are over here. And you have your draw pile, which comes into play very significantly in the game because it represents your hand of cards. It also represents your health, because to take wounds, if you have to take wounds, you need to bury cards to account for the wounds. Now, these can come back, and I am going to talk about this later in the video. Burying is different than discarding. If you bury something, it is to account for a wound. If you discard something, you may be instructed to in the course of the play. But you are cycling through these cards during the course of the game. There are ways to bring in more cards during the course of the game by purchasing advanced feats for yourself and reward gear depending on certain progress that you make. So there are ways to increase the size of your deck, but it has to be managed on that level very carefully, because if you ever receive a wound or have to absorb a wound and do not have a card to pay for it, you can also use the cards in your hero area. If you don't have any card to pay for it, you have lost, you have died, and that obviously is not something that you want to have happen. Other gatekeeping apparatus in the game are these two tiles here, rectangular tiles here. This is the quest charter, and it has a time track which will keep track of time passing in the game, and the various symbols here, as with every symbol in the game, mean certain things in the course of the game. So if you're passing over this symbol or potentially this symbol or that symbol in a certain quest, it may have various effects, and these do change from quest to quest. You also have a reinforcement track, and this talks about how many monsters will come in during the beginning portion of a turn, the reinforcement portion of the turn. There's a darkness track, and this is going to manage how rapidly you advance that time track. So for example, if you are on 1, each time you're instructed to advance, you go 1 space over. If you're on 2, 2 spaces, etc. And you need to complete your quest before you run out of time. Needless to say, there's a ton I could say more about this setup if I was doing a game and rules and how to play overview, but that's not what this video is. I'm just trying to give you a very basic sense of the position of cards and what the cards are. And now we're going to get into the 5 reasons why I think it is worth investing in this game and what you will get out of it as a player if you do so. The rulebook in this game is so detailed because the level of choices in this game are so deep, and there are choices in the game that are common, say, to many games. For example, choices in combat, what weapons to use, what types of attack to put on monsters. I'm not going to go over that here. You can find that in many other games. I'm going to touch on some areas in this game that offer choice which are not typical necessarily to games. And this comes at the end of an encounter. I mentioned that you have individual encounters that you're trying to fulfill as you make your way toward fulfilling a larger encounter. And in this particular case, we were completing this death in the desert, and we met the end condition when we eliminated all the enemies. So there are no enemies in play at this point, so there are no enemies that you're going to see here, and we're not talking about that. What we are talking about, however, is the reward choices that we get. So when we successfully end a location, we were here on the Crystal River, it's now become safe, which means we will be able to heal up, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We get some reward options for the success of the encounter, and it's not simply a matter of pulling from a deck of cards to get some reward cards. You are given the options of how to get the cards, which cards to take, and where to put them into your deck of cards. There is a reward deck, and there's a reward offer here that's represented up top that has reward gear available. And we'll take a look, for example, at this Fire Sting, which offers, it is a bladed flame gear, and it has other keywords: light, piercing. It is a reward, it's a sword, and it is also a weapon. These keywords come into play because we need to be able to match those keywords with our proficiencies. So we'll look here under the gear proficiencies. We see dagger, sword, spear, armor, potion, ring, and trinket. Because that sword one at least matches up, we could potentially choose this as reward gear for that character. So you would need to match that up. We can also see an example here of the necessity you have for understanding these icons and reading what they can do. Because reading down here, we see that this is a card that is placed in our hero area. That is represented by this H here. Fast actions are free, so you can do as many of those as you want. So basically, we would just be able to place that down when it came to that portion of our turn. And then to use this card, it would be also a fast action. And what this is telling us is that we can deal 2 physical damage with it at the cost or at the expense of raising our focus by a level of 2. And focus is something that is on our track here. It's represented by these numbers, and the greater focus we have in part means the greater and number of enemies that we are going to attract, or we are going to attract enemies more initially toward us. There are some other things it means too, but that's one of the things. So that is the penalty or the cost for playing that card. And it also says we may discard a combat card, and the combat in italics refers to these types of keywords. So we have some cards in our hand perhaps that are listed as combat cards. To place a fire symbol on an enemy, which has some effects, and then we would need to move our focus up, and then we would be able to place this card on the top of our deck, and I'll explain the implications of that later on. It could also have a different action, which was to deal 3 wounds at the expense of 3 focus and some other effects. So you need to review all the choices of every card to see whether you would want it, and start by determining whether or not you could even play that card. So that is one of the options to get to take a reward card from the reward display and put it into your hand. The other choice involved is that initially you get to pull a reward card from the reward deck and review it, and decide whether you're going to want to place it with the other cards on offer or place it down at the bottom of the deck. If you decide that you don't potentially want this card and you place it under your deck, you will receive a resolve token equal to the number that is here. These are the resolve tokens, and they are used in the game for purchasing yet other types of cards. So there is choice involved in doing that as well. Additionally, every hero has their personal reward gear. So these are general reward gear that any hero can use, and there are personal reward gears. And you can tell that it is a personal reward gear by the presence. It says reward gear here, but there's the presence of a symbol here. And this symbol is going to correspond to one of the players. So here we have a Seki, and we see that this is a Seki's personal reward gear. Now, these are also available as potential rewards. However, in order to get a personal reward, you need to spend those resolve tokens that we mentioned here, equal to the number on this card. So if a Seki wanted the loot of Spellsong, she would need to spend 2 of these reward tokens. The reward tokens are earned in various ways, the most common way being when an enemy is dispatched with, that each enemy is going to have a value on it, and whoever kills the enemy will get those resolve tokens for the party. So they are a collective amount. So the very fact of just gaining rewards for an encounter, a successful encounter completed, has all of these different choices. You get to draw a card, and you can add it there, and you can take the card from there and either put it in your hand or place it under the deck. And then if you place it under the deck, you can either get a number of resolve tokens equal to its value, or spend those resolve tokens to buy your own personal reward. And then when you buy your personal rewards, you're going to be choosing among those if you have any left, and then you can spend those resolve tokens and place those in your hand. So all of those choices just to get the rewards that you're due from successfully ending an encounter. The choices offered in terms of healing, or what is called resting or restoration in this game, are perhaps the most interesting and unique mechanic in the entire game. When an encounter is complete, and you are in a safe, or if you are in a safe location, and one of those ways would be if an encounter is complete, you will look down at the location here at the restoration symbol, and you will see a number, in this case +3. You will then look on your own individual hero charter and see what your innate restoration value is. In this case, it's +2. This means that this hero has a total of 5 restoration points that can be used to regain health. Now, I mentioned briefly that the health of your character is all dependent on this deck of cards that you're cycling through. This is the deck right here. Off camera is the hand of cards. This hero currently has 3 in her hand. Above it is the burial pile, and this is where cards go that need to be buried to absorb wounds that happen. And then you have a regular discard pile. Now, we have one ally with our hero here. This is Aravel the Fair, and she right now has 2 wounds on her. So I have to be mindful of the fact, I'll just put her here. I need her, really. She's only got 1 health left, so I have to use a simple mechanic, which is basically to take 2 of the 5 available restoration points that I have and heal her completely. So I'm going to do that. That leaves me with 3 restoration points to use. Well, how do I use them? You can use them in a number of ways. There's various choices that you have. You can take a card from your burial pile and move it to your discard pile, and that costs you 1 restoration point. You can also take a card from your discard pile and move it to your deck. That costs 1 restoration point. If you wanted to take 1 card and move it from the burial to the discard to the draw deck, that would be 2 restoration points. You can also use any combination thereof. We only have 3 to work with in this case, but you can use any combination thereof to move cards around to get cards from one pile to another to bring them back into your draw deck, which is you're going to need to continually draw from as you are filling your hand to the maximum hand size of 5. So again, there's a lot of choices, and I'm not going to spend time going through how you would necessarily make those choices, but what you would need to do initially, or what I do initially, is first look at my burial pile, because when they're in the burial pile, they're like the farthest away from getting them back into circulation, and see, is there something essential that I have that I want in here? And you can see, once you know the game a little bit, you can simplify all this text and iconography by noticing, well, all of these pictures are the same. These are my basic feats that I started with. This thing here that has a different picture, this is some reward gear that I picked up in an earlier successful encounter, because we're sort of mid-game here. And you might want to take a look at that one first to see how quickly you want to get that back. And in this case, I would actually want to get this back. It's a very useful card because it is a card that can be bumped up and gives me different options about the type of damage to deal and how much damage to deal. So I would then decide, okay, I'm going to take this card. I have, again, 3 points left. I could move it to my discard pile. That would cost me 1, and then I'd have 2 left, or I could actually move it back into my deck if I wanted to spend 2 of my 5 on that. I probably would actually spend those 2 of my 3. I probably would actually spend 2 of those 3 to do that and put it into my deck, and I believe I could put it on the top of my deck. I'll have to confirm that. So that leaves me just with 1 restoration point. Again, I used a couple points to heal up my ally, and then most likely I would be looking into my discard pile, because I definitely want my draw deck to be, my discard pile is pretty big. I want my draw deck to be big enough to get me through a couple of turns in drawing cards up to a full hand size. I would look through here and see what I wanted based on what I already had in my hero area, and also what I already had in my current existing hand. Again, there is a lot of reading through the cards because you have a lot of choices to make. Until you know clearly what the cards do, you have a lot of choices to make. So then I would use my final restoration point to move it into my draw deck. Again, not typical for games to give you so many choices and so many options in terms of healing. Everything in this game, every action you take, every action that is on a card is so thematic, and once you get the iconography down, once you understand the rules enough not to have to keep referring back to the player aid or the rule book, it really does shine through, and it really makes you see the consistency and the depth of the game design, where there really isn't a moment that something isn't realistic, when realism is defined as the what is defined within the game state. So for example, Let's take a look at, this is from Aseki. She is a songstress, and we're going to take a look here at this reward gear of hers. And you look at this card and, you know, there's tons of text and it seems somewhat daunting, but what this card is saying, it's the Lute of Spellsong. It is in essence it is the essence of her character. And basically what this is saying is that if you play other cards that are song cards or arcane cards, and these are inherent qualities that she has as a songstress, as a mysterious songstress, if you do that, everybody benefits. And in this case, everybody gets to draw some cards. And the other thing that you can do with this card, if you choose to use it this way, is to treat some arcane cards as if they had the song keyword. So again, to take some aspect of your personality, if you want to call it, your characteristic as a player, and really allow your inherent songstress nature to shine, and play this card that way to turn other cards into song cards. So when you understand the game terms, the card makes a lot of sense without having to spend a lot of time parsing through all the language. Well, what is a song card? She already has a lot of song cards, and here's an example of a basic song card. You can see it's also arcane. It's a healing card. It's her knowledge. It's the Song of Reprieve. And what it allows people to do is to take any 3 cards from their hero discard piles and remove wounds from them. So again, talking about how the mechanic of the game works, where your piles and your discard has to do with your wounds and paying for wounds by burying cards and needing cards to have in your hand or on your hero area to pay for the wounds. Here, to allow yourself to some reprieve, some breathing room, she can sing this song, and the game mechanic that it enables has to do with moving cards around that are going to help you heal. An advanced song feat, here's an example of an advanced song feat. This is the Song of Enchantment, and this is arcane knowledge, and it is also a song, and it allows her to discard some other song cards to cancel an enemy's special ability. So she's singing, she's enchanting the enemy so much so that they forget about what their special ability is, therefore making it easier for you to deal with them. So again, this is just 3 brief examples from one character of 3 different cards and how they work together thematically with who the character is, and who this character is very different from who all the other characters are. And every single card in the hundreds of cards that there are works in this manner. And when I say works in this manner, I mean is thematically accurate in terms of the world of the game. We haven't really looked at any of these villains yet, so I'll just point out here that the theme is carried throughout as well. So we have this hunter swooper, which is a sort of flying enemy, and one of its effects is that when it initially comes in, it's flying around. So before you engage with it, it is at a further range until it swoops down, and then you can attack it from a closer range. So that's what that means, and again, makes sense if you're thinking about it. Ditto for this desert lurker here, which basically says that until it activates for the first time, it has a benefit. It has a bonus, a protective bonus, and an attack bonus also, because it hasn't been revealed to you yet. But once you engage it, once it does attack you, then that goes away. The flaming blast of the flaming flying skulls inflicts some fire damage. Makes sense, pretty simple. And the last one we'll look at here, I really like this crawler worm, because what happens with this is that it doesn't attack on the same round that it enters. It's a worm, so it sort of digs in, and it's not going to immediately attack you. So again, very thematic, makes a lot of sense once you understand the iconography. This is one of the most truly cooperative games I have ever played. We're looking here at the early beginnings of the Dragon Eternal quest, where I've got Malachi the Shadow Priest and Alatha the Huntress going together against the world of Mistfall to find and eliminate a dragon that has been ravaging the area. And you can see off here the setup is a little bit different than the other quest we saw, there's a lot of places to travel. There's only one quest token to obtain, but they do need to get to here for their final encounter. What's happening now, we are at the encounter, the first encounter, Fiends of War, and this encounter has some special conditions where enemies that have the Fiend keyword are going to receive an extra health point because they're fighting with each other. I guess they're enraged and fighting with each other. And additionally, we are positioned here, sorry, that's not from the game. We are positioned here at the Red Tombs, and in this location, all of the tormented enemies in play also receive a +1 health. So it's a pretty dire strait in terms of that, because you can see, and I've used the resolve tokens to indicate the extra health. Right now we're fighting a homunculus. There was the Shadow Priest already dispatched with a corrupted drake in a prior turn. This is the sort of the second turn of the game, and we've got an Ice Witch up here. She is a fiend and she gets the extra, and we have this Red Hand Mist who is tormented and he gets the extra. So there's a lot of powerful enemies out, and we are in need of assistance from each other, and this is how it can really work effectively. We see that the ally for the Shadow Priest has an ally action that can be taken, which can allow this ally, try to show it to you here, to choose a keyword, to discard a resolve token from the pool, and then all regular enemies with that keyword can reduce their defense by 2 until the end of the hero phase. Well, clearly what we want to do with this, or what we could do with this, is in essence sacrifice our own benefit to attack the homunculus who is attacking us at range 1. Well, you know what? She's got range 2, actually. I think this could actually help out her too with an attack. But where I was going with this was to use this other action, not the attack action, to identify a keyword that's going to either be tormented or fiend to reduce the defense value of the enemies whose attack is increased to help everybody out. I do see now, though, which I hadn't noticed before, another way this ally could help is because with a range 2, this ally could send an attack over to the hero area of the Huntress, and she's going to need it because she's dealing with a bigger monster pool than he is. In terms of his cards, also, he's got the possibility to discard, let's see, where's this card? To attach a card as a mark card onto a targeted enemy and to deal some magic damage when that happens. So this Mark of Dusk card that he has, it has a keyword mark on it. It only has a range of 1, so in and of itself, it could not work to help out his companion here. However, we note that he has a special skill that says, once per hero turn as a 2-range fast action, you may attach a control card to any enemy. So this card here, which has, I mentioned mark, actually we're looking for the keyword control. This is a control card, and it would be able to be attached to an enemy in the Huntress's hero area. And we'll look at why that's significant to do in a moment. We're going to do that. Now, the question is whether you can also then activate this action. I'm say that you cannot, because we're using this as a shadow target, and the action that we are taking here as our fast action is going to supersede and therefore not allow the reflex action on this card. That's what I'm saying. It's to my detriment, so I'm going to go with it. So we're going to take this card with our fast action of shadow target, and we're going to place it here as a control, using the control keyword, onto this Ice Witch. It also has the mark keyword, as you're going to remember, and you'll also see here, which will come into play, that the Red Hand Mist through prior turn has been marked as well. I forgot to mark the ally. I use these red cubes, these come from another game, just to indicate who's completed an action, so I don't double up accidentally. So we decided to choose the tormented keyword to indicate the reduction in the defense, and we did that because we have one tormented homunculus here, and these keywords were not the same, so had there been an overlap, I would have gone for that to help her even more. But as it is, she will get a reduction on one of her enemies for the defense on both sides down to 2. A reduction of 2 down to 1, and this defense is going to be reduced to 0. So this will help us eliminate our enemy and, of course, really help her out there. Now, we haven't even done anything on our turn yet to directly help ourselves, and we still have a regular action to take and as many other reflex and or what are they called, fast actions as we can. But I want to just look briefly at the reason why we spent so much effort to do this. And by this, I mean attach a card to this Ice Witch. We've got two, the Red Sand Mist and the Ice Witch are in her hero area, and she has a card in her hand, we'll look at it here, that says, well, it's really two cards in her hand. She has both of this Precise Strike card, and it says, as her regular action, she can resolve any action of a sword card in her hero area. She's got a short sword right there. And if the target is an enemy with a mark card attached, and now those are both her targets, we can lower their defense by 2 to a minimum of 0. So basically, and we are going to have to increase our focus for that, with the contribution already of lowering this, we can in essence take away the defense entirely of this, either one of these, and reminding us that the health is going to be 4. So taking away a defense down from 3 down to 0 for both magic and physical damage is really going to be a benefit and give us a much greater chance of eliminating this. Now, you recall, only one regular action can be taken per turn. However, she does have this quick shot card in her hand, and what this says is that she can discard a progress token from a card in her hero area to allow her to resolve another action of a ranged card in her hero area, which is going to target an enemy with a marked card. She does have this longbow, and it's in her hero area, and again, we have now both her enemies are marked. What we don't have yet is a progress token down in the hero area to allow us to use this quick shot. However, I know that we can get it, and the video is getting too long for me to show you that, but this is all part and parcel. I knew all of this when I was taking the action of the priest here, the Shadow Priest, and that is why I used his actions to make sure that she got the additional marked card that she did not have in her hand to allow her to make full use of the card combination that I know that she can get to. This is just one small and short example of the ways in which the cooperative nature of the game is so integrated into so many different cards with so many different possibilities that it really is one of the most thoroughly cooperative games I've ever played. I own card-based adventure games that have 500, 600, 700 cards, which include expansions and new packs and whatever, and it still feels like you're playing the same game when you get the new cards in. And maybe the monsters have changed, maybe the locations have changed, but the game still feels very much the same. Not so here. There is such replayability in this game because the fact that this is the encounter deck and you are scrolling through the encounters in many cases to match them, well, in every case, to match them up to the keywords, for example, of the location that you're on. So things are not going to remain the same, and they're going to be thematically tied together. The monsters coming in, the same situation. You're going to have different levels of monsters coming in, and you're going to have monsters that are paired to the scenario that you're in, the encounter that you're in, and the quest that you're doing. The quests themselves feel very different. I mentioned this is the dragon one that's set up here. The Mother of Nightmares indeed is die very early all the time in that quest. It is a nightmare indeed to do. And because of the fact that the quests are not simply just different stories, but have different configurations of the quest tokens that you are seeking out, we haven't even touched on that. This is an example of a quest token. The quest tokens in each quest mean different things. They give you different choices when you have them, and that adds to the variability. Additionally, your characters are quite different. The characters right out of the box play very differently, so you can combine them in different combinations, and putting them into different quests gives a really different feel to the game. The cards that are available as rewards, as your basic reward gear, there are a ton of them, and you can spend a lot of time getting through the reward offer, or I should say placing out the reward offer and not getting through it, because you can only get a certain amount of cards each time, and as I already mentioned, you may not even opt to take that reward gear. So again, the way in which you populate your deck after each successful encounter is also going to be varied a lot. All this to say, it comes together in a game that has a great deal of replayability right out of the box. The same quest with different characters will not feel the same, and certainly different quests feel a lot different from each other, whether you're playing the same characters or not. Highly, highly replayable. When you have a game that offers so much choice and so much theme carried throughout and is truly cooperative, and you are interested in playing a game that is cooperative, and when you have a game that has such high replay value that each time you play it, it feels very different, all of that is a recipe for true immersion in a world, in an experience, and the 329 cards in this game create an environment that becomes alive, that is one where you can really feel the enemies that are flying above you and the ones that are creeping around below you. And part of that is made possible by the wonderful art on the location tiles. I showed you some of that during the course of the game. The art throughout, I think, is very excellent. The art on the cards is relatively small because there's a lot of text, as we know, but it is excellent too. Here's a stone fist, and whenever a hero, ally, or enemy deals any physical damage, they deal +1 physical damage. Well, that's actually pretty good. I haven't been there yet. That's in the Borderlands. This game, if you put something into it, you will get something out of it, and what you get out of it is a truly immersive experience on par with the games that in my collection I consider to be the best immersive experiences that I can get through heavy games. They tend to be through heavy games because you tend to have to put a lot of effort in to get something out, and it really does pay off here. As I give you my final thoughts, I just want to show you some of the ally cards because we didn't really talk about them so much, but they're double-sided and they all have different capabilities and actions and health and strengths, and this is just yet another way to add a level of decision-making to the game. Now, I think the rules may say to randomly pick an ally, but of course you don't have to do that, and again, you can just see here the depth of material. Now I know I'm repeating myself, but it is the takeaway message. The depth of material that is in the game is matched, I guess, the complexity of the rulebook, and what really put me off, to circle back to what I said at the beginning of the video, initially in getting into this game, there's a payoff. There's a reason there's all those rules in the rulebook, and honestly, aside from what I mentioned about the keywords, I'm not sure what could have been done in a better manner. As I said, there are some excellent playthrough videos out there, and I watched parts of one series myself just to make sure that I was doing this correctly. Now, it's an advanced game, I would say. It's, maybe for somebody used to heavy war games, this would be a sort of medium heavy game, but for somebody who doesn't play in the war game genre where there's really, really heavy games, I would say this is a heavy game. The components are great quality, the mechanics all fit together, the There is a logistical component, a grounded, as we talked about, place, geography comes into play here. There is three-dimensionality because you have enemies that are coming in from above, you have enemies coming up from the ground in some cases, and this gives you a full-fledged 360-degree experience of the game. The uncertainty in the game, I guess I will say that it follows the standard adventure tropes. You are traveling somewhere, you're encountering enemies. There aren't really random events per se. There are effects, as we talked about, based on the, I won't show you too many of the encounters, but we'll just randomly look at one here, Resolve of the Dead. So each encounter is going to give you some special rules, some setup rules, some special rules, and those would be, perhaps you could consider them to be like events per se, but they're really usually modifications to either the strength of an enemy or the action of an enemy. So there's not going to be any event that's going to be a side quest coming up, for example, something like that. So the decision making that you have in the game, while vast, is going to be fairly known to you in terms of what you're trying to do and how you would do it, obviously through manipulation of your cards and hopefully help from your fellow travelers. Overall, Mistfall, Heart of the Mists, really one of my favorite recent gaming experiences, and I highly recommend it.